Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to my talk today. Just a quick introduction. I am Windra, and I lead strategy at Element. A lot of what strategy means is, research and development into products, design, looking into the overall DeFi ecosystem, seeing how different protocols work and how they could integrate with us or how we could build on top of them. And Element Finance is a fixed rate protocol on Ethereum. We do effectively yield stripping on chain, and we create a fixed income market. We are effectively a market for fixed income for users to come in and buy a fixed rate and effectively source yield in a fixed rate fashion. So let me go ahead and talk a little bit about this topic. Research and development into sustainable DeFi ecosystems is something that we've been thinking about for the past 2 years. We launched mainnet last year, and at the moment, we're currently building out version 2. And a lot of these different aspects were things that we considered to be extremely important when we built out and designed out our version 2. So just really quickly, just wanted to talk about just the DeFi ecosystem in general and the DeFi stack. It's always growing. There's a lot of different ideas and protocols that are being built on a daily basis, and different versions of protocols that have been around the space for many years. There's a high degree of composability. This enables a wide array of ecosystem developments and endless integration opportunities. We've had conversations with various different DeFi protocols where it was possible for us to build product on top of them, and it was also possible for them to build product on top of us. So because there's a high degree of transparency in terms of how these products are constructed, they're easily replicated. And we've seen this be something that is fairly common in the DeFi product development space, which at the end of the day, it's great for end users, but you see these products, for example, in traditional finance, where a principal protected product would take a 10% fee, management fee from the user. And in DeFi, when products end up taking too big of a cut from a user, a competitor could come in and look at the construction of that product and figure out where the fees are being extracted from and effectively start over and offer a much more competitive yield product for the user. And we've seen this, Yearn, with Convex and with other yield aggregators just constantly competing with each other to offer the best rates for the users. And of course, there's this massive opportunity for simplification because there's still multiple layers of abstraction and complexities in various different decentralized applications that make it really hard for users to interact with the protocol and the product. And so we try to be mindful of that and try to remove a lot of those different layers and make it really easy for our users. So just some of the aspects that we think about a lot when we started to map out our version 2 from everything that we've learned, some of the core focus in our research and development is the product. And we constantly ask ourselves, are the incentives the actual product, or is the usage of the product the incentive? And what we mean by that is, there's been a lot of protocols out there where effectively the incentives and the rewards that were emitted by the product effectively became the product itself and became the reason why the product was effectively being utilized to begin with. And when we want to analyze on-chain data in terms of what the users are actually doing on the protocol to figure out what sticks and what doesn't and what's actually being utilized, some of these rewards and how they're designed actually start to skew the data a little bit because all of a sudden you see all these actions that traditionally are not natural or organic sequence of actions that the users are doing, but rather they're doing that to effectively leverage up on the rewards that are earned on the protocol. And so when we talk about sustainability, we think about how we can incentivize users to turn the product itself into an incentive. So you want to use the product because you like it, because you're earning yield, you're earning interest, you're making money off of it, without actually having any form of external rewards that effectively is necessary to keep the product afloat. So this is something that we think about when we design out the product. But also we kind of put ourselves in a situation or a scenario where, what happens worst case in DeFi? Like what happens if the rates go too low, or what happens if we end up having no incentives at all? How do we create products that are still attractive to users? And part of our version 2, one of the products that we're coming out with is, because Element is a yield stripping protocol, we basically can allow users to take exposure to, for example, the supply rate of Compound, which is directly tied to the borrow rate of Compound. But if you borrow from Compound and you take on the supply APY interest, you can effectively hedge your borrow position and effectively make it a fixed borrow. And if you look at the supply rates on Compound and Aave right now, they're like 1% to 2%. So what this enables us to do is take advantage of the downturn in interest rates and allow users to be able to borrow at 1% to 2% on their USDC, which is effectively a very enticing product for some of these users. So those are things that we think about in terms of worst case scenarios for DeFi or for the market. How can we take advantage of that and create a product that users might be interested in? And of course, how is the current product being utilized right now? So we go out of our way to, and we'll talk about this in the next slide, but we go out of our way to source feedback. We look at on-chain data, we look at trades, we look at all the transactions that interact with our smart contracts to figure out what aspects of the protocol are users technically interested in. Because we're naive to assume that maybe our protocol is being utilized for purchasing fixed rates, but some of the early usage of the protocol was to leverage up on the variable side and basically just bootstrap the market on the liquidity. So these are things that we currently think about when we develop out our product. And to kind of go into some of the user feedback, we consider user feedback and users in general as like something of a privilege or a luxury, and not a commodity. And what I mean by that is, there's so many different optionalities in terms of products that you could use when you go and interact with DeFi protocols that are out there. And it takes a special amount of energy for a user to go into your protocol, figure out how it works, what they like, what they don't like, join your community, and then tell you what they don't like about it. I mean, most users, if they don't like your product, they just leave. And so for a user to come into our community and reach out to us and tell us what they don't like about the protocol, we value that time and that energy very much so. And so we try to do our best to also understand, what type of a user this person is. We learn about, are they somebody that is high net worth, low net worth? Do they typically like to trade? What is their level of sophistication in DeFi? These are all things that we try to ensure that all of our users that give us feedback know that their feedback is being heard. Because like I said, there's so many protocols out there, I would say 80-90%, that they don't know what's wrong with their product, because nobody is taking the time and the energy to go and tell them, hey, this is what I don't like about it, and this is why nobody's using it. And so for us, when somebody goes out of their way to tell us these things, we take it very seriously. Because ultimately, we are building things for the majority and not the minority. And the majority of of users that we want to attract into this space are just not using crypto yet. So we want to figure out what are some of those things that is required to get the majority in. And of course, with an adoption focus in mind. We also try our best in terms of the core team to be active users of the ecosystem in terms of like other various DeFi protocols. Because what we've learned is that sometimes what our team wants to build, and sometimes what teams want to build in general, is not necessarily what users want to use. Because a lot of teams, they want to build products that they think is super interesting or revolutionary or new. But when a user interacts with it, there's just so many different pain points that makes them a bit confused, especially because the level of sophistication with users is not very high. And it kind of deters them from using the protocol to its full potential. And so, part of our initiative is to always ensure that the builders on our team, the engineers, get linked to the feedback that the users are giving and letting them know what the users actually want. If the users want an extremely simple way to buy fixed rates, then we have to effectively remove every single different aspects that make the UI confusing and make things a lot more intuitive. So we always keep that in mind, and I think having a team that understands and is super receptive of that feedback of what the users want is, I think, extremely important. And then, of course, we always ask the users as well as ourselves, what are aspects of a protocol's user experience or user interface that we find enjoyable and why. I think that putting ourselves in the shoes of a user when interacting with not only our own protocol to kind of remove bias, but also the other the protocols of others is extremely important, because you begin to naturally figure out what you like and why you like that specific aspect of a protocol or a product. And you can kind of incorporate those little things into the design of your actual product. And, I think it starts with something extremely simple. It's just maybe listing out, your 3 most used DeFi protocols and why. Is it because it's easy to use, because it's easy to understand? The moment you land on the page, your eyes know exactly where to look, and it's extremely simple. Those kind of things are a lot of the things that we share internally to make sure that we develop our product the right way. And of course, building, I believe is a lot more enjoyable when you live it, using your own product. And the last thing that, and this is a little bit more broad, some of the things that we kind of do is to really look forward. Look forward in terms of what our users will look like in a year from now. We kind of look at what our users are now, and that really depends strongly on the market cycle, but what will our users look like in a year from now? What will our users look like in 2 years and 5 years from now? Because, as crypto and the entire space continues to evolve, the level of sophistication, but also the type of users that come into the space is going to change radically. And as more people come in, education might not necessarily keep up with that, with that level of sophistication that's necessary. But, we look at different time horizons and we try to capture these different time horizon users. Like, how do we capture users that are using DeFi now, but also develop products for users that are coming into the future? Where does the space go from here? And what's still missing? For us, guaranteeing fixed rates and creating a product that demands a lot of trust requires things such as insurance, requires things such as custodial solutions. And, these are some of the big major common things that a lot of the big parties that are interested in using Element are asking from us. So, currently, the insurance solutions that are out there, they address smart contract risk, but there's things like DPEG risk. There's front end risk, there's phishing risk. Yeah, and these are all things that are extremely important to any institutional investor, because the insurance that they're used to covers all these different liabilities. So, we have to think about all these things that are still missing, and how do we kind of either figure out how to build around that or figure out the right partners to build around those different things. And of course, the last thing is how the macroeconomics and the market cycles play a role in the user's necessity and wants. And this one is really important, because this kind of goes into a little bit more of like behavioral economics. If you think about the bull market, which we've kind of been in for the past 2 years, we look at some incentive designs, for example, like X Sushi, where you can effectively stake your sushi and earn dividends. And that wasn't really something that was successful in terms of a token model. But as you can see now, staking in like GMX is extremely profitable and interesting for users because they're earning dividends. And I think a lot of behavioral economics, when I talk about those kind of things, is what are users expecting right now given the market cycle? And when the market is all green all the time, users are looking for venture type returns. They're looking for 5x. They're looking for 50% APY. And so how do we design incentives that match that need? But also when the market takes a downturn and people are just looking to survive, and looking for like a constant flow of income via dividends like GMX, how do we design incentive or a protocol that kind of caters to both sides of the market? Because as the markets change, and the markets go up and down, there's different aspects of your product that might not make sense or might not get as much traction. And these are things that we are definitely mindful about when we kind of design out the protocol. We want to be able to look at the best case scenario, but also the worst case scenario, and really factor in some of these market cycles. So, these are just some of the core focuses that have been recurring in our version 2 research and development. A lot of just user perspective stuff and things about and looking forward in terms of future development and where we think the space is going. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for attending the talk. That was concise and brief, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Does anybody have questions? Yeah. Oh, we can do that. Okay.
Hello. Thanks for a great talk. And I'm just wondering that since that user base is pretty important to know how to maintain your whole project being sustainable. So I'm just wondering that how do you get these informations? Do you just simply wait for their feedback, or you should like actively know how to
It's a
do
little
the
bit of
user
both.
research?
I think we've been fortunate to have users that reach out to us and let them know how they feel about the product. But we also have a pretty lively community where we have community members that are active, including myself, that actively reach out to the more active members that are using the protocol. And we schedule calls. We tell them, hey, we ask them, hey, we would love to hear your feedback in terms of how your experience has been using the product. And then we kind of put them in a profile. Like we learn a little bit more about them first to figure out what bucket they fit in. And then we take a lot of what their advice is. And we try to not take it to extremes in terms of what the feedback we get is, but we try to aggregate a lot of the feedback we get. And if there's a common theme that everybody is looking for, if there's a feature that they would really like to have in the protocol, and we hear that all the time, it's definitely something that we put on the top of our priority list to ensure that we have that incorporated right away. And those are things that I think is really important, because when you can show that you're actively listening to the people that are giving feedback, they're more inclined to give you additional feedback in terms of how they feel about the product.
I get it, because it's a little bit tricky that since sometimes we can just let community just guide us what to do, and sometimes we have to be the one to guide the community. So yeah, it's quite complicated.
We try to source, if there's like an overwhelming feature that the community wants as a whole, then that makes sense. But if there's like a strong opinion in terms of how things should be done, then of course that you have to kind of be extremely discretionary about that and figure out, okay, this is more of a team decision. This is how we want to move forward with this. And yeah, I think the balance between what the community wants and what you can incorporate from that side and what the team feels they're confident in terms of executing is like the balance that you have to find.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, Windra. So I wanted to ask sort of at what point, so say you've launched a product, at what point do you sort of, essentially what if the lack of use of a product is not down to that the product's bad or the product has some flaws, but it's more about lack of business development and marketing? How do you sort of distinguish between that being the root cause of not having enough users versus there actually being flaws with how the product is constructed?
That's actually a really good question, and something that we struggled with early on as well, because we had extremely complex documents that made it extremely difficult to understand what the product does. And from our perspective, it was extremely easy. It was straightforward, but it took a lot of back and forth with our marketing and communications people to let them know that, hey, maybe we need to take the perspective of what the users want in terms of document content to better understand how our product works rather than what we believe works. We published multiple different Medium articles about how Element works, and people were still confused. And then instead of let's re-strategize in terms of how we want to release our future content, instead of doing that, maybe we should just ask the community, hey, what are you looking for? What type of examples are you looking for? What do you struggle with? Which aspects of the product is confusing to you? I think that everyone typically gives every product a chance if they can. If you're a new product and people don't really fully understand what you're doing, they're going to give you a chance. But if it's too confusing, if it's too complicated, then the amount of time they give you to fully understand how your product works is smaller and smaller. So I think dumbing down the documents, making things really extremely easy to understand is important. But as soon as you release a product, I believe it's all business development. It's all user acquisition, and just you might not necessarily be required to find power users at the start, but you do need to find users that are at least interested in trying out the product and giving you feedback in terms of what they think about it, why they like it or why they don't.
Thank you.
We're done. Cool.